you a trader or business owner? Or anyone just wanting to learn how to be healthier, better, and more business savvy? You've come to the right place. Welcome to A Trader's Life with your host, Rick Mazur.
We're going to begin the episode soon, but I want to take a few seconds to tell you about SurfNet Corporation. SurfNet is a full-service internet provider. They can help you in many areas, including web hosting, internet strategy, custom programming solutions, security solutions, cloud computing, and much, much more. Check them out today at www.surfnetcorp.com. That's surfnetcorp.com. How you doing, Len?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome. Glad that you were able to come on the show here. I think we got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about that'll really help folks. And I just wanted to start in the beginning before we get into it with how you got started and everything. You went to school for criminal justice?
I started in criminal justice. That's my degree. Yeah.
Really? What were you going to be, a lawyer?
I was going to be a lawyer. Yeah. I was thinking about being a lawyer. I was actually thinking about getting into the FBI. So I was looking at the right path to get into the FBI, and everybody told me being a lawyer is probably the best way to get into the FBI.
Me too. Not at the FBI. I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And then I decided not to do it, but I realized that it was probably better for me in the long run.
We were the smart ones, you and I.
I guess. I don't know. I heard. And so if we go back to before 2004 range, you also worked in finance?
I did.
Credit Suisse?
I worked at Credit Suisse. They were Credit Suisse First Boston, and halfway through my journey there, they dropped off to Credit Suisse. So I was part of the institutional banking side, but I was more what was called a sales trader. So I was a vice president of equity investments is what I was.
Okay. Did you do like stockbroking too?
How I got into the institutional side is actually started out at Morgan Stanley, and then I had a connection in at Credit Suisse. I was lucky enough to get an interview. So I went through the whole Credit Suisse training program, which there was a book written on called Liar's Poker, which is similar to that. So I went through the whole institutional training program, and next thing I was on a sales trading equity desk, and I learned a ton at a young age in my mid-20s about the world of finance and investing.
How long did you do that for?
I was at Credit Suisse for about 6 years, and I was at Morgan Stanley, I guess, for about 2. So my Wall Street years were about 8 years, I think, 7, 8 years, right around there.
Yeah, that seems to be people's pain point. If you're not a lifer, it seems to be 6 to 8 or 10 years. Yeah. And we do more day trading, and that's pretty much the life of a day trader too. If they make it that far. But why did you decide to say it was time to quit and move on to something else?
It was one of those things where I think there was a lot going on. So we just went through a merger with DLJ. Some people may know that name from way back in the day, and there was a lot of shifting changes happening at the bank. Unfortunately, I had a child at home. We were having some medical issues. And talking to my wife, we just felt as if it might be the right time for me to take a buyout and move on. I was offered a couple other positions with other banks after I left. Actually, a couple clients offered it to me. But I said, you know what? I think the Wall Street thing is just not for me. So I took a step back and said, man, let me take the buyout. And I walked away.
And that's when you started your first entrepreneurial journey with the Rank Me SEO?
No, believe it or not, before Rank Me SEO, I was part of an e-com startup. And
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't have that in there. I probably should put that. I should let people know that more. But I was part of an e-com startup for the better part of about 2-3 years. And we focused on high-end event tickets. So you're thinking things like Broadway. You're thinking things like first or second row tickets in concerts. And I did that because of the amount of times I had to go to certain New York brokers, Chicago brokers, Philly brokers, and get high-end tickets from my clients. And I remember somebody approached me about, hey, would you want to buy a ticket brokerage business? Because I was hanging out for about a year, figuring out my next move. And I was like, I won't buy it, but I started looking into the numbers. I'm like, why don't I just start it? And that was the advent of the internet, and where you could start buying things online and purchasing things online. And that's how I got involved in digital marketing, as I jumped in as an e-com startup, and it was all on high-end tickets. And that was my next phase of my life.
Well, you and I used to scalp. I used to go and buy the tickets back in Ticketmaster. They used to have the machines where you went live, and we used to go. I think they had 3 different systems in the Midwest area. So we used to go across the border. I was in Illinois to Wisconsin, and they would let you tap into that system and buy tickets for Chicago. And we used to do pretty well doing that.
It was a huge business. There was actually, so I shouldn't even say this, but years ago, you were able to buy machines out of California. Guys were building spinning machines. So
Really?
that's how a lot of brokers back in the day got their tickets. You would set up these networks of computers and you would spin tickets. And these computer tickets would go in and grab first row, second row, third row. And that's how a lot of the scalpers would grab their tickets. So we became pretty good at looking at arbitrage situations. So we could build out a small team where we'd go look at prices on eBay and see what the prices were. And then we would go in and try to identify where we thought the next buying level would be. In other words, we'd see a concert that was half sold out and we realized, okay, this concert's going to sell out because every other venue sold out. And then we would identify and we'd say, okay, let's start going in and buying those tickets. So we jumped ahead of it. So literally we applied, because everybody that was part of the startup was all part of Wall Street. We used those arbitrage trading tactics and literally applied it to buying tickets. And it worked out well for us.
See, I was the grunt that was and buying the tickets, and we would have guys calling us from like all over the place saying like what you said, they had identified what was going to sell. So they would call us and say, look, we'll take anything you got for Jimmy Buffett and whatever. And so we would just go and just get everything we could get. It would be like, so I was on the other end of what you were doing.
So you were almost like we were like the traders and we were going down to the floor. You were like the floor guy grabbing the ticket. Yeah,
right.
Funny.
It is funny. I didn't know that. It's
very similar.
So then at some point you got out of that and then you started the online marketing.
Yeah, what happened was we had a full website presence. We had a full e-commerce presence. We were running about 4 or 5 websites. One of our main focuses was Broadway tickets. We really were focusing on Broadway. We knew that we had to have more of an online presence. Back then there was exchanges and stuff like that where people would buy and sell your tickets. Other brokers would call and we could do that. But the internet was really growing. It was really getting to the point where people were really starting to buy tickets. And so we hired an SEO company. We hired them out of Ohio. And we watched what they did for about 3 or 4 months because we were hoping, okay, here comes the dollars. They're all going to start pouring in and we could really start scaling our business. We realized after 3 or 4 months, like nothing was happening. And I started peeking my head in 2004 about SEO and looking at stuff. And I'm like, okay, what these guys are saying is not what they're doing. And anyway, so long story short, the partner I was involved with at the time, we stepped back. He's like, well, why don't you try to learn a little bit? So I literally stepped back, went in my basement, and I learned every single thing I could about digital marketing. I actually went back to county college to learn how to code certain websites. And I'm like, I want to figure out this thing from A to Z because luckily for me, this is where the Wall Street thing comes back in. I was part of those roadshow teams where I used to sit down and watch companies like Google and Amazon and the rest of them before they went public. They used to do roadshows and I was listening to them talk. So back in 98, 99, I'm like, this whole world's going to change. What we are looking at right now is never going to be the same. And I remember coming home and tell some people about stuff that's coming. Like, get the hell out of here. It's not going to happen. I'm like, it's coming. So, but I realized that we were never going to turn back from digital marketing. And I realized we were never going to turn back from digital commerce. And it was only going to become larger. So I taught myself. So anyway, 2008 came, the housing bubble went boom. A lot of people were not buying high-end tickets anymore. Wall Street got devastated. And I was like, look, I got a wife and kids and a mortgage and I need to figure something out. So I reinvented myself again. And I said, okay, I'm going to try to do digital marketing. I see there's a need for it. I put ads on Craigslist. I would even put an ad in a local paper, if you can believe that, under computer services. I can optimize your website. I learned how to do SEO. I learned how to fix websites a little bit, but I was by no means a coder. And that's how I started. I started as a freelancer and I built up a little agency. I always said I walked out one day, I turned around, I walked in and there was 20 people looking at me. And that's how quick it blew up. So that was the iteration of where coming into where I'm at now. But that's kind of how I got into it.
We talked a little bit offline before we started and we had an ISP, and we used to have people that would call us for SEO and different things like web design. And we did pretty much everything. But SEO back then was weird because everybody wanted to be on the first page. And I felt like that people thought they could just do it themselves a little bit and they didn't want to really pay. And we got a lot of pushback on that. But it seems like you guys did pretty good with that then.
Yeah, SEO was definitely our core focus before I got into the whole myriad of digital marketing. But, I think SEO was, people always say, well, it was a lot harder back then. I'm like, no, it was actually a lot simpler back then. So the thing was that, well, back then you were optimizing for more than just Google. You had to look at Bing, Yahoo, I forget what Bing was called before, MSN Network. But anyway, there was quite a few other search engines you were optimizing for. But back then, if you wrote a good title tag, if you had the right content, if you were doing intralinking on the website, and if you were able to grab a backlink or two, there was no reason why you weren't going to get a client to start ranking 1 or 2. What changed in the SEO world was when Google started growing and Wall Street got involved, and they were like, how else are you going to make money? And they've always were pushing their pay-per-click and pushing their ad platforms. It was at that point you quickly realized halfway through that, okay, SEO is going to really fall back, and Google's literally trying to push it as far back as they can because they're trying to make this an ad heavy type of first page, second page, or search results. So what happened was that it became a business model, and no matter what you did from an SEO perspective, it really didn't matter going forward.
And what year was that?
I started noticing a change in SEO where the paid was becoming a major issue right around 08, 09.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. So then that ran its course. Now, how did you then convert? Because right now you have Comexis. And what led you to pivot from the RankMe to Comexis?
Yeah, it's two other iterations. I feel like I'm constantly changing. But so what happened was you realized that SEO wasn't really driving the leads and wasn't driving the business that we needed it to. For some companies, it was. For e-com companies, it definitely was. But we realized that companies need to really go all in. They needed to do pay-per-click. They needed to do paid social media, which was very new back then, and various other types of things to work with their traditional. So we said to ourselves, okay, we can't pigeonhole ourselves and call ourselves RankMe SEO because then everybody just thought we were an SEO company. And right around 09, 10, SEO started getting like this bad name because there was scam artists out there. Oh yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that. Nothing was getting done. So we decided to rebrand as Comexis which was communication excellence. And we basically opened up our breadth of tools all the way across the board. From A to Z, we were able to handle anything from a digital perspective. At that time, I got close and I identified an individual who was running a really small branding and creative agency. And I saw a need for website design. And I ended up merging with him. It was called Mustard Seed Creative. And Comexis then hit its next iteration, which was a full-scale service agency that could pretty much offer anything from a digital perspective. That was before the shift that I just recently made, which is where I think there's a new thing that's emerging out there, which is where we're pushing into now.
Well, I believe that many businesses are falling short on this. Many aren't spending. They're trying to do, at least that I talk to, they're trying to do free posts, and there's a place for all that, the hashtags and all that kind of stuff. But I think the budgeting spend scares them a little bit. They don't know what's going to work. They don't know how much to spend. It's a struggle to track it for some people, to know what's working and what isn't. So it seems like with what you do, you can help them get a bit more clarity on how to move forward.
I think the biggest issue we faced was the same issue that a lot of agencies faced, and that was agencies and really smart branding and creative people, PR agencies, were getting blamed for campaigns failing. And we all took it. We all took our lumps, and we all said, okay, well, maybe we're not getting a good job, and maybe we're not doing well. But, I started looking at stuff, and there was a couple clients actually we had that were past clients. And I remember when they were one client, I'll never forget, I say this all the time. He was an attorney, nice guy, bright attorney, but I'll never forget, he brought our whole team in. And we knew we were doing well for this guy. But, he put us up and he did on a whiteboard. Like, he basically said, okay, here's how many cases I got from you. And he named like two other things. And then basically he looked at it. He came back to us. He's like, all right, so I got 6 cases. So he invested with us $60,000 for the year. And I think he spent another like 50 in paid. And we're looking at it, but he made something in the neighborhood of $350,000 to $400,000. I forget the exact numbers. And he's like, okay, this is a failure. I was like, wait a minute. Coming from my investment background, I said, you just spent $110,000 and somebody gave you close to $400,000 return in 12 calendar months, and you're telling me that's a failure? So it was that and another client that was complaining about lead volume. And I went down a rabbit hole and I started looking into customer acquisition costs, lifetime value ratios, lifetime values of a client. And I said, why can nobody come up with a financial plan or financial model to say, invest this? If you have the right message, your rate of return should be this. And that's the iteration we're at right now, where we get people away from, stop worrying about your rankings, your traffic, your bounce rate. Forget that. Leave that to your agency. What we're trying to get you to do is saying, here's what your investment should be. This is what your marketing budget should be. And predicated upon you having a good product and your agency doing the right job and you're investing the right amount of money, this is the rate of return you should be looking for. So it's that conversation, the financial conversation that nobody wanted to have, that we're now forcing our way in. And this is an industry that I believe is emerging out of the SEO, out of the digital world. And it's like the space in between the CEO and over to the CMO. I think this is where we're emerging right now, is we're talking directly to the CFO, and then they know how to better allocate the money. If that makes sense, that's where Comexis is now.
No, it does. And so do you find that varies by industry, that percent return that you target, or is it pretty much
So I think it
the
varies.
same
I think
across the
companies
board?
like e-commerce companies know this cold. I think that they're very smart with it. I think that they understand everything's digital marketing. They know they have to put a certain amount of money in. But when you start moving into certain B2B service-based businesses, other types of B2B sectors, education, medical, they don't know what that rate of return is. And they are always trying to do what we call the cardinal sin of marketing, trying to out-optimize a bad spend. So that's what we're finding. So I think it's a global problem from a business perspective, but there are some niches that truly understand it.
Well, and I think that what you do is great. It's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, was because when you start talking about things like ROI and you start talking about things like customer acquisition costs, those are terms that are thrown around a lot. But I just don't think, I did a little advertising on Google myself with some things that I had, and they're quick to tell you, here's the clicks you got, here's how many people went to your website, but there's just not an easy way to track it. There's a way to do it, but there's not an easy way to track it from end to end. What is your true cost besides just what I spent with Google? Because we all know there's more than that. And then somebody went to your website, but okay, did they buy something? What did they buy? Then you got to go to a different report to find that. And maybe it's still that way to some level. I don't know if you guys have a portal with what you do that kind of helps integrate it. We'll get to that in a bit, but yeah, it just seems to me. And then when you get to ROI or customer acquisition costs, it's the same thing. Okay, what does it cost to get a customer? It amazes me, like if you ever watch that show Shark Tank.
Yeah.
On TV, that's what they always ask Kevin O'Leary, what's your customer acquisition cost? And nobody knows, barely. Even when they're on Shark Tank.
It's amazing.
They
I think it's funny because Kevin O'Leary is big with it. Mark Cuban just dismisses you out of hand if you don't know it. Because I'll never forget, watch one episode. And it was funny because as I was doing my research and trying to figure out how am I going to reinvent Comexis, I'm a big fan of Shark Tank. So yeah, when you say that rate of resonates with me right away. But I love when people don't know their customer acquisition costs. And you see Mark Cuban's eyes just roll in the back of his head. And I never forget, he went at one guy and was like, how can you run a business, scale a business, if you don't know what it costs to acquire business? And the guy's like, that doesn't make any difference. And I'm done. He goes, I don't even want to hear what you have to pitch anymore. And I think that fundamentally is one of the biggest issues. Because if I bring you back to the attorney that I mentioned who said, okay, it's $110,000 and I got $450. One of the things I started going into is I don't think you understand the amount of costs that are going into your acquisition. I don't think you understand it's not just Google. It's not just AdWords. It's Jenny who's picking up the phone up front. Are you mailing out anything to the individual? Are you doing any traditional marketing? There's a myriad of different, are you sponsoring events? Are you networking? Because the mistake they're making right now on digital marketing or any type of advertising platform is they're saying, I got no rate of return on that. Well, you got no rate of return on that because how much money are you investing in that in the entire customer acquisition cost? So if you spent $1,000 on lawn signs and your customer acquisition cost to acquire a client is $50,000, I'm throwing numbers around. Well, how can you decide whether that lawn sign's effective or not? And I'll get into in a minute on how you have to balance that, how you have to weigh it. But I think too many companies are making decisions on whether their marketing campaign is working based upon individual parts of the customer acquisition cost opposed to the entire ecosystem of the customer acquisition cost. And that's the problem we're facing right now.
Well, we know that this is a problem that people need and they need to solve, and they need to be doing advertising. I read, I think it was on your site, the phrase companies going out of business because they can't afford to advertise. It's coming. And I agree with it too. And we have to get those people to the point where, okay, I know I have to advertise, but they want to do it in a way that's smart. Hey, I'm willing to invest X per month, but is there a way I can really know what's going on? So I know that I'm really getting that ROI. And again, the traditional tools that are out there are not going to give it to you unless there's something that's came up in the last couple of years that I haven't seen, unless you go with a company that specializes in it.
And you know where I think the fundamental problem is when trying to establish a budget is everybody's like, well, I have XYZ dollars in which to invest in marketing. And we hear that repeatedly. And again, it's one of the reasons why we're pivoting over to this type of business opposed to just doing straight digital marketing and implementation. Your budget is predicated on your funnel needs. So if you're a company out there, or you're a lawn maintenance company, or let's say you're a lawyer, a startup law firm, and you need leads. Let's say your referral base isn't too big, but you need leads. And you come to me and say, okay, well, I have $10,000 to invest in leads. Well, the problem is that if you need leads, that means you need to start filling the middle of the funnel. Not top of the funnel is your brand. That's your awareness where you get people in. But the leads is the qualified leads is the middle. So you have to spend on pay-per-click or something like that. Let's say you need 50 leads to get to the revenue. And I'll walk back in the numbers in a minute. But let's just say you need 50 leads. Well, what if that cost you more than $10,000? What if that's like a $25,000 investment or a $50,000 investment? For certain types of attorneys, it can be. So your marketing budget is predicated on what your funnel deficiencies are and then what the platforms are telling you the bidding environment is. It's not, I'm going to walk in and say I have this much to spend. It doesn't work that way anymore. You come in and Google and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, they're going to tell you how much you have to spend predicated on where your funnel deficiencies are. And that right there is the fundamental problem 90% of companies have out there when they're trying to establish a marketing budget. That point right there.
Now, is that something that if they have those deficiencies in those other areas, is that something that you can also help them with, or do you direct them? So you can help them end to end from the top of the funnel all the way down.
Yeah. So what we do is we do a complete funnel audit. We take a look at it. We basically start off with the number one thing. And this comes back to, I don't know what my ROI is. And the number one reason people don't know what their ROI is because you need something to weigh against it. Weigh against it means what is your current revenue or what is the revenue goal you're shooting after? So let's just say you have a revenue goal you're going after. To get to that revenue goal, the next step down, no matter what business you're in, fundraising, medical, lawyers, you have to have a sales process, a sales funnel, even if you don't consider yourself sales. And you have to look at the funnel deficiencies and say, what's stopping me from getting to my revenue goal? What are the hindrances that are getting to my revenue goal? Once you have those identified, then you drop down the next step and say, what do I need to do from a marketing perspective? And what's it going to cost to address those funnel deficiencies, which ultimately is going to get me to my goal? This is the process that we walk clients through. So believe it or not, we can consult and work with clients and not even really do their digital marketing. We can have it teed up and ready for other agencies, teed up and ready for their internal team. And then as their campaign is growing and it's going along, we're constantly coming in on a monthly or quarterly basis and consulting with these teams and saying, okay, the ROI is not being hit because of this, or let's move this around, let's move that around, and we can get to the ROI. Our goal is getting that client to their revenue goal and then the ROI they're looking for. Everything else we leave up to the branding people, the marketing people, and so forth.
So you're giving them the initial assessment, determining what you believe the ROI should be at based on what they're doing. And then you're following up with it every quarter and saying, okay, we hit it, we didn't hit it. If we didn't hit it, make adjustments and things like that?
Yeah, so we have an ROI dashboard that's live. So basically clients, what they do is they come in and we actually send out a weekly email, a monthly email, a quarterly email. It takes them 5 minutes on each email. And basically it makes sure that their online dashboard is live. We're making sure that we know the revenue numbers, the sales, the leads. We make sure that their customer acquisition is up to date. Any types of things that they're working on or that they've invested in that maybe they haven't mentioned to us. So as long as they update that email on a weekly or monthly basis, that dashboard will always be live. We come back in on a quarterly basis. Some companies want us on a monthly basis, and we go through the numbers. And little things like if they are having a problem with certain types of funnel deficiencies, we say, okay, well, why are you investing so heavily in billboards and radio ads when it's clear that the problem is your funnel at the bottom? You can't close business. Your close rate 0. You need to allocate your money there. And when you know where to allocate the money on the funnel, that's where it puts you in the space of, I know what type of content I need. I know what type of platforms I have to invest in. I know what my money where it needs to be allocated. So we've developed this entire system all the way down from A to Z to get clients to start thinking like, okay, there's actually a playbook here. There's actual offense that we can call. It's not just, hey, let's do some Facebook ads. Let's see what happens on Google. No, there's a playbook you can open up and you can start calling plays. And when you get that, now things are starting to make sense. And now you can justify your spend. And that's why if you look on our website right up front, we make sense of your marketing numbers. And that's exactly what we try to do.
Well, that was one of my questions. What is the financial impact that the digital marketing platforms like the Facebooks and the Googles have on businesses that are looking, to move in with their campaigns and do that?
So I'm asked that question a lot, and I tell people all the time. People always go out there and they say, we are concerned about Facebook's privacy, or we are concerned about Google's privacy. You shouldn't be concerned about privacy. The minute you turn your phone on, your privacy is gone. So you can get as upset as you want. What you should be concerned at as a business owner or potentially as a consumer is that Google and Facebook are controlling the customer acquisition costs of a company, which means, again, like I won't go through the whole thing again, but they are telling you that this is how much it's going to cost to advertise on our platforms because this is where everybody is. When you control the customer acquisition cost of mom and pop shops or of corporations, at that point, those prices are now going to be pushed back on the consumer. Or potentially, like we put in that one thing where we said companies could go out of business because if they can't afford to advertise there, and let's just say maybe it's a one-man shop or two women own a shop and they can't go out and do grassroots marketing. Well, how are you going to market? How are you going to get business? How are you going to get clients? I think it's time for people to realize the reason Google and Facebook stock prices are so high, it's not because of Google Home and it's not because of Facebook Portal. It's because they're controlling these customer acquisition costs. And until other platforms arrive in a big way, those stock prices are going to continue to go up. They're going to continue to smash all earnings records, and it's not going to stop. So the one thing I said, which is funny, Google just rolled out a core algorithm update Saturday, and it's got everybody in panic. You might remember that from the SEO back in the day. Oh, Google has an update. What Google has an update means we need to beat our numbers on earnings. So let's take a look at what earnings are going to be this quarter, and I guarantee you they're going to be fantastic because the update hit companies that historically don't spend a lot in pay-per-click, but now they're going to. So
let me ask you this. I know that you probably have a certain type of client that you deal with. Everybody's got their core, type of customers that they go after. But let's say you're a company who is just starting out and you're concerned because maybe you listen to this podcast and you say, look, I got to be prepared to spend some money to get where I need to be, but they're concerned whether or not they can actually afford it. Is there something that you can do for them in a sense where, hey, I'm just starting out. This is what I'm going to be doing. Give me an assessment of where I need to be. What do I need to be at so that I can even decide I want to pursue this or not? Is there anything like that exists?
Yeah. If they're coming, you mean so this individual be coming in cold with no.
Yeah, let's say, I'm going to start a company selling subscriptions for whatever online, some course or whatever online, and I'm willing to spend some money. I have no idea. I don't want to waste my time for a year doing this if I'm going to get blown out of the water. So what can you help me with in that regard?
Yeah, that's where you drop down to digital strategy. And I think that comes down to if you are a new company, you want to give yourself enough runway to invest in your brand, that top of the funnel. So if you are not bringing a database of past clients over, maybe you had another job and you have a database of clients you can market to from an email marketing campaign, then maybe what you need to do is invest your money in the branding strategy. And by that, I'm running certain types of ads on Google and Facebook, which is considered awareness, which means your entire job is just letting people know you exist, letting people know you're out there, as well as doing things like networking. And you should be doing sponsorships and lawn signs and so forth. I know that sounds remedial, but you need to do that. So it's getting people to understand, okay, I'm invested enough. I have enough money to start a business and to do a marketing campaign. I know that I have to at least try to establish a digital footprint, make an investment in the top of the funnel. It's the companies that are running in and trying to open up a new business and saying, hey, no, Len, dude, I need like 50 leads right now and I got $500. Well, that's not going to happen. So they're the ones that are not in trouble. So if you are going to open up a new business and you're thinking about a new business, and let's just say you don't have a database of anybody in the past anywhere, give yourself enough time and leeway to build that brand out and make sure that you are building the top of the funnel. And once you're doing that, and if you do it the right way, then you're going to drop down and realize and say, okay, well, then trying to acquire leads is going to be a little cheaper for me because now I have people who've been following me. Maybe they're following me on social media. Maybe I'm running a retargeting campaign. They know who I am. So I don't have to spend $55 per lead to get them. There's a whole map that we can build, but hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, you mentioned content strategy. So what do you see as the difference between content marketing and content strategy for people who don't know?
Content strategy is basically trying to identify what type of voice that you're looking to discuss. Like what part of the funnel are you looking to write content for or video content for? Are you trying to develop a strategy around people who don't know who you are and you're trying to put that out there? Are you trying to develop a strategy for qualified leads and your sales has they're talking to these qualified leads? Or lastly, are you developing a strategy around trying to help close business and here's a good piece of content to put out there? Content marketing is taking that strategy, what you've actually created it, and then go out there and market it. So do I put money on that content on Facebook? Do I put money on Twitter with a sponsored post? Should I create an ad to lead people to this content on YouTube marketing? So that's the two. That's my take on what I think the two are.
And we mentioned this before a couple of times, sales funnels. Can you describe a little bit about the sales funnel and why it's so important to digital marketing?
I think the sales funnel is critical directly what lives directly underneath the sales funnel is the buyer's journey. Some people understand it, some people don't, but the buyer's journey is basically you go through 5 stages. You go through 5 stages in a buying cycle, and everybody does this. You either are in the awareness stage, the consideration stage, the purchase stage, retention, advocacy stage. Historically, as a client, you'll probably go through all stages. Sometimes if you find yourself in an emergency situation, you may go directly in the purchase stage. Pipe bursts in your house, you're right there. Maybe you're a jogger and you were never aware of this running sneaker that was out there. They were advertised to you, and now you become aware. Hey, there's a new pair of sneakers out there. I have a problem. I'm going to look at it. How you allocate your ad dollars across the buyer's journey is predicated on what your funnels look like. So historical sales funnel is top of the funnel, which is brand awareness stage. Many people call it brand. The second part of the funnel is leads or qualified leads, however you want to do it. And the bottom of the funnel is conversion. That's like the close rate. You can break your funnel up any way you want to. I've seen funnels 15, 20 layers deep, but the standard is brand, lead, conversion. So how you allocate your money across the buyer's journey is predicated on where you have a weakness in those funnels. That's how I look at it.
Excellent. That's a lot of good information for people. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your platform and what you have with Comexis, and walk me through where you start with somebody, what the platform offers. Is there integrations that you have in the platform that people can integrate with? I saw that on your website. That interests me a lot, APIs and things like that. Just give me a little more information about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way our thing starts is basically when a client engages with us, the way we start is we basically start with an audit, with a campaign financial audit. And we basically say, okay, let's try to identify an ROI. Let's try to identify where you are. A real ROI, not an ROI, not a ROAS. ROAS, by the way, drives them the wall, return on ad spend. If you're an e-com company, I'm all in. But if you are an attorney where people go through like an ecosystem to purchase through you, ROAS doesn't work. It just doesn't. You realize that quickly as you're losing money. But we basically do a financial audit. We say, okay, what is your current numbers at? What's the current revenue? What do the funnels look like? What are you investing across the buyer's journey? Like, how is that allocated? Underneath, we say, how much does all that cost you? And then basically we do a mathematic equation and say, okay, this is what your rate of return is. So you can either say, here's your return, or we can basically say, here's your lifetime value ratio. We put all of that on a dashboard. So we then talk to the client, we look at them and we say, are you happy with your rate of return? And if they say we are, we can say, great, we're glad we can be of service to you. And believe it or not, we have had that, and that's great. So, and you can bring us back in quarterly and we'll look at it again. But if that doesn't happen, we then talk to the clients and say, okay, you have to understand, you're not happy with your numbers and that's not meeting your goal. And they'll say, well, no. And we'll say, well, there's 3 reasons why you probably failed. And the first reason is because you're not spending enough money, because let's call it the way it is. You're probably not spending enough. Let's look at your customer acquisition cost. You're spending $2,000 a month on digital. It's not going to cut it. Let's just say they are spending enough money. Then we go to the second reason why they're probably failing. That's because they're operating in a silo. You'd be amazed how many businesses put their digital marketing on one end of one part of the room, their traditional marketing another part, their sales in another part, and they'll hide their marketing manager, Jenny, all the way in the back. They don't want anyone talking to her. Opposed to bringing everybody in saying, our goal is $1 million. How do we cohesively work together to make sure our brand message is being properly allocated, properly interpreted all the way across all platforms? Let's just say that they've funded enough. Let's just say that the silos are not there. And the last thing we come back to is that you have no value proposition or no purple cow. So that's the thing that we get them talking about. And you'd be amazed how many companies, they're spending the right amount of money. They're not siloing. They feel like they're really good. Everyone's cohesive. Well, you know what's going to happen now? It's innovation. So that's the great thing about digital marketing. It's forcing you to innovate. It's forcing you to come up with something that's totally different, because if you're selling a hammer and they're selling a hammer, there's nothing that separates you. Nothing. It's just who's going to outspend each other on marketing, if that makes sense. Once we get them to believe that, then we drop down and say, let's build a roadmap. And that's what our dashboard does. We then say, here's your revenue goal. And then we say, here's your funnel deficiencies. And then we say, this is what your buyer's journey should look like across all platforms. Here's what your investment should be. And then we do a little back end numbers and identify what their operating expenses are, what type of their margins are running on. And we say, this is the rate of return that you should be shooting for. So once we have that all established, our campaign's up and running, either we can run it from a digital perspective, although anymore we have no problem allocating that to their digital agency or their internal marketing team. At that point, we then have a conversation on a quarterly basis, like I mentioned, and say, okay, let's see what's going right. Let's see what's going wrong. And let's see if you're actually hitting your ROI. And the thing we say is before you fire your agency, before you fire your marketing manager, you should really understand the finances of your investment. And I would say 50, 60% of businesses really don't have any idea how they're investing in marketing.
I agree. I think if you ask somebody, they would say, oh, yeah, I got to be advertising on Facebook. Well, what does that mean? I mean, it could mean a million different things. And how do you know where you're at? It's just not enough to throw some ads on Facebook anymore and hope for the best, like throwing a dart at the dartboard. And I think that some people just might not know where to go, which again, why I wanted to have you on, because there are companies out there that will help you through all of this stuff. Now, do you help also with like campaign assets and things like that? Or do they have to come up with that on their own as far as actual advertising and content and stuff?
No, believe it or not, we're a full service agency. So, we can do everything. I have all in-house video, website design, creative, content strategy. We run SEO, pay-per-click, paid social. We do all of it. We're a small agency, but we do all of that. But I think our core offering right now is the ROI piece. The ROI piece. And it's, look, let's just say you're going to start a business, or let's just say you're a business owner and you really say, you know what, I need to make a push in the marketing, or I need to make a push in the digital, or I know I need to invest more money, or I don't know where my money's going. We're the company you bring in. We're the company that you talk to before you go talk to an agency, before you come up with that brand new branding message, like before you come up with all that great stuff. We're the company you want to bring in to say, okay, now that I'm armed with all this, I know where I have to advertise across the buyer's journey. I know what my funnels look like. Then go after those companies. Too many companies are just saying, I need to do $2 million a year. Let me go call up Jane's digital agency. Jane doesn't know what $2 million a year means to you, and she has no idea what your finances are, but she's going to paint a bunch of pretty pictures and put them all over the social media. And let's just hope it works out for you. That's not what marketing is. And I think that's the best thing I could tell anybody listening right now is that the Wild West is over. There is a cadence and a protocol how you succeed in marketing, and think way beyond just generating leads and putting ads on Facebook. There's a science behind this, and it's not that difficult if you just read the tea leaves and know what's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely worth that they give you a call. I assume on your website there's a thing they can get a consulting or contact information and stuff.
Yeah, they can contact us directly and we have a conversation. I think the beauty of us is we limit our clients to about 25 clients a year. Okay, and that's a mix of consulting. It's a mix of digital agency and creative, because we just like to make sure that we can allocate our assets or our resources properly. And we're the kind of company where I own it, but I have clients that text me. I have clients that give me a call and say, hey, what do you think about this? Think about that. And we like to keep it that way. I have zero intentions to become an agency of 50 to 100 employees. That's not the way I want to live.
Give more personalized service and the clients a little bit better and stuff, which I think is important in this line of work as well, because people want to know, hey, they're basically not relying on you, but it's basically, hey, this is the plan. And if the plan's not going good, they have to know how to fix it, and they need somebody to call. You can't be just a number. You have to be, personal with them as well. So, yeah,
I think the thing we've created, and I think we call it an open source. If other people want to build on top of the strategy we've built or the plan we've built, we have no problem with it. But I do believe, and I know this is a big statement, I don't mean to come across as a conceited jerk. I don't, but I do think that what we've created here, I believe, solves any single solitary marketing problem out there. You're either not investing enough, you're in a silo, or you have no value proposition. If you know those three things, and if you in your heart of hearts look at why you failed, one of those three things is the reason. It will always be the reason. And I think that really is what we're trying to get clients to understand, whether they become a client or not. So,
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to thank you for being on. I think that you gave us a lot of good information here. And if anybody wants to know more, you can contact Len at his website at comexis.com. And again, we'll put all the links: LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the socials. And it's been great. So I hope that we'll get some people over to you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Appreciate it, Phil.
Thanks, Len. Hey, everyone. If you enjoy these episodes here on the show, please don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform wherever you listen to audio. It's a great way to be reminded when new episodes are released. You can also rate and review the show as well, which helps to spread the word to new listeners. Also, if you're interested in trading the financial markets and curious about stocks, options, futures, Forex, and more, please head over to my website at rickmazur.life. Be sure to join our mailing list. We are currently in private beta with Enlightened. Enlightened is a trading community, and we'll provide great information and lots of free resources. We have tons of things planned for expansion to give anyone interested in becoming better at finance, investing, and trading your money some great opportunities. Get on the mailing list today, and let's get trading and better at managing our money. So that's it for today's show. Let me know what you thought of it. I'd really appreciate it, and it will help make these shows better for you. Feedback is a very valuable tool to get better at anything. You can hit me up at Twitter at RickMaz1106. That's RickMaz1106. Or on Instagram at RickMazur1. RickMazur1. Use the contact form on the website, rickmazur.life, and we'll also have everything in the comments section for each show page. I personally look at all the feedback on the site as often as I can. Finally, if you have anything to contribute or ask, or would like to appear on the show through an interview or one of our other segments, you can leave a voicemail at 1-800-590-0174 or by contacting us on any of our socials or use the contact form on the site. We'd love to hear from you. I consider us all a community, a group. Let's remember, in today's more challenging world, we are people first. We're humans who just want to be treated as such and live in a place where we can all prosper and live well. Bye for now. Until next time. See ya.